the longer someone's at your church, the harder it gets to invite somebody. However, the best inviters to your church are going to be new people. And if somebody goes, like this Sunday will be somebody's first Sunday at Church of the Highlands and at Connexus Church, our church, if they get in there and they love it, they're going to do what you do when you find a new restaurant, when you have a grandchild. They're going to tell everybody. They're going to be like, this is an awesome church. It's amazing. Now, the thing about a new person who's truly unchurched is all of their connections are new to your church. You end up with a network effect. And then if they invite another person that's new to your church, they're now connected to a lot of other people who are new to your church. And if you start to diagram this out, I mean, I can see you doing the math in your head. That's where the real exponential returns are.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the GrowLeader Podcast, where we grow leaders who grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. On today's episode, we get to listen in on a conversation with Pastor Chris and also Carey Nieuwhof. Carey's a renowned author, speaker, and leadership expert. And as a former senior pastor, Carey has spent years guiding pastors and leaders through the ever-changing landscape of church leadership. And today, we're going to get into some fascinating church trends that Carey has seen in the global church.
Well, Carey, welcome to the GrowLeader Podcast.
It is an honor to be with you today. Thanks for having me, Chris.
And we kind of did this as a podcast swap.
Yeah, we did a mic swap. You were just on my show, and now I'm on yours, so I got the better end of the deal.
Oh, I was just getting ready to say, I think I definitely came out ahead because your podcast is, I think, the standard of equipping the church.
Well, you shared things you've never shared before on it, so thank you.
Yes, and I hope we do the same on this one too. So
I will be as transparent as I can be.
Well, I know we've already introed who you are, but I want to say publicly that I think you are one of the most invaluable leaders, resourcers to the body of Christ, and I'm just so grateful to call you a friend.
Well, I'm very grateful for your friendship, and thank you. That's extremely kind of you. I feel very fortunate to be able to do what I do.
And I do a lot of what I do intuitively, and I do it after kind of a tried and true model, and then when we make it work, we pass it along. But you're really like smart. You come from a well-read, well-researched. People don't know this. Used to be an attorney, like so. Mm-hmm. So as I said on your podcast, I have this inferiority complex. Like you're really, really smart, man.
Well, here's my theory of leadership, Chris. We're all making it up as we go along.
Okay, well,
I really think that is leadership. Like, I didn't know how to run a company. I didn't know how to be, it was only 1 year in law. I didn't know how to win a court case, but I figured it out pretty quick. I figured out church leadership. And then, this company that I have now was a hobby. I mean, I made it all up. And, I do my homework and I do my research, but I think most of us, people think we know more than we do.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you think about that. That's how I think about what I do.
Well, summarize, though, what you do. So, like, if you were to put it in a sentence or two, what you feel like your life's mission or what the company's mission is, what is it?
So it's to help reverse the decline in the church. And that is a refinement of a life passion I have to help people thrive in life and leadership. So ministry almost ate me alive by the end of my 30s. And I went through a period of burnout, and my life literally swings on a hinge. And that hinge was the burnout I hit at 41, almost 20 years ago. And I know how hard it can be. I know how hard it can be in the trenches. And so I want to make sure that leaders personally are healthy. Like I'm not John Mark Comer. I'm not going to go out there and read to you the ancient church fathers and mothers. I don't read that stuff. But I do know, I do dabble a little bit in personal health, but I also know that getting vital information is really important. The way I think about my company and, the podcast I do, the courses I produce, that kind of thing, is I went to law school, but in all my years of law school and the bar admissions course, nobody taught me how to run a law firm. You go to most law firms, they're not actually very well run. It's like doctors. They don't know how to balance the books, right? It's like, because they just learned how to operate on you, but they don't know personal finance. And then I went to seminary, but as you know, they never taught me how to run a church. So I try to fill in the blanks for leaders. So it's like, okay, you can parse a Greek verb, but let me show you where the church trends are going, or let me bring you the best leaders I am capable of assembling on my podcast, like Chris Hodges, and we're going to get the backstory. If you had dinner with Chris, you had lunch with Chris, I hope this is what you would talk about. So that's what I see as my mission. And in the middle of that, we hope to help people thrive in life and leadership. And when they do that, guess what? We have healthy churches. Yeah. They grow. We're aligned around that. I want to see churches grow. You want to see churches grow. And we all have our little role to play in the kingdom.
Yeah. Well, you're the perfect guest for Grow Leader because that's exactly what we feel like the church needs. Like you, I went to seminary and still didn't know how to do a wedding. I mean, I literally graduated and I had my first funeral and I didn't know where to stand. I mean, you wouldn't think they would actually teach me something I was going to need, almost immediately. And so I remember calling a pastor friend saying, I don't even know where to go. Like, what part of the room do you stand in? Who do you shake hands with first? And I remember getting coaching through that. So that's what I love
Chris,
about
my first day in ministry. Can I just tell you the story? It was May 2nd, 1995. I'm 30 years old, just past my 30th birthday. And I wrote my sermon in a day and a half. And then I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I called the head of our elder board, and his name was Norm. And I'm just like, Norm, I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, go visit somebody. I'm like, oh, good idea. Okay. I had no clue what I was doing. No idea how to fill 40 hours a week plus. But anyway, well, I figured that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. And how many years now have you, when you turned your church over to your successor? How many
It'll
years
be a decade in the fall of 2025. Isn't that crazy? So I stepped out of the lead role when I was 50 and kept teaching for another 5 years, held the teaching mantle for 5 years with his blessing and cooperation. But then it was 5 years ago, end of 2020, I just kind of stepped back. Now I'm a guest preacher. My wife and I attend, we give, we serve, I volunteer. I'm part of a small group, but I'm one of the congregation, and maybe I preach a couple times a year.
Well, you know why I'm asking, because I just...
Yeah, really? Is this relevant, Chris?
Exactly. We just had this transition of roles here too. So what should I expect? Is there anything you learned? You're 10 years in and I'm about 2 months in. So what would you say to a guy like me?
So Gordon McDonald told me this, Gordon. He said, they forget you quickly, and he is right. So I'm here to be your depressing therapist. To tell you 5 years from now, you're not going to know half the church and they're not going to know who you are. I was at our small group, just started last night, new group. Pretty sure 2 of the couples had no idea who I was.
Wow.
And so I had to introduce, I was one of the people who helped start the church. And that's cool. You have to be okay with it. But then I was standing in the lobby on Sunday and this guy came up and I knew him, but I didn't know his name. You know how that goes. And he turns to my wife and says, man, I hope you preach again soon. Your last sermon was so good. I really appreciate it. I took all kinds of notes. And then he turned around and left. And I'm there, nothing for me. Nothing for me.
That's awesome.
So they forget you quickly, but that's not bad for your ego.
Yeah. But you've done,
and then how do you become, the other thing Jeff Brody, my successor, and I have is we'll never criticize each other publicly or privately.
Right.
That goes to each other's face. So it's just sticking to that rule. And there are times, particularly in the first few years where I'm like, well, I wouldn't do it that way, or I wouldn't do it this way. Zip it, talk to God, maybe talk to your wife. That's it. I'm sure there were many times where he went home and said to his wife, Leslie, you wouldn't believe what Carey did today, or blah, blah, but we kept that solidarity. We were locked in and have been locked in now for 10 years. And this, good decisions get better with time. Bad decisions get worse with time. That was such a good decision. And we just had lunch last Friday, Thursday, just hanging out as friends. I'm going to see him tomorrow. I coach him as a volunteer at his request. So that relationship is very strong a decade later. So those are just some field notes from someone who's a decade in.
Well, you're a student on churches and church activity. This might be a risky question to ask. What's your take on how we did it?
I think it's brilliant.
Give me your assessment and tell us, and be you can be honest. Like what did you
from what
like?
I know, I listened to the GrowLeader podcast that you did on that, and I happened to be at an event where Lee Domain showed up.
Okay.
The day after you and Mark announced it, I texted you and I said, "Are you going to be in Cabo?" And you're like, "No. You were in California, I think," which is fine. But I think it could be a model for the ages. I think we need a mega church that does this well. You worked on it. It wasn't a rush decision. Somebody said to me, this is so weird. They're like, congratulations on 25 years of ministry, scandal free. I'm like, wait, that's a thing now? Like, should that be the norm? But we have a healthy church with a healthy leadership. And I think what I see that I really like is mutual admiration and respect. Where you end up in trouble, and you guys are in the early days right now, is where people in your seat, people in my seat have opinions, and we overreach. We say, you drive, but then we're always grabbing the wheel. It's like, well, hang on, you're not quite in the right lane. And I think the ability to let go. So two things. Number one, we said this on my podcast, that sense of inferiority that maybe has haunted you for a lot of your life. Maybe something God uses because you haven't got the ego of like, well, I'll do this better. You have a healthy sense of self where you know where you end and where other people start. You've got good boundaries in that direction, I think. And then you really have confidence in Mark, and you've got Highlands College and GrowLeader.
Yeah.
So you've got something really. I ran into Rick Warren the other day. I was at an event. He was in the green room and we were catching up. And I said, it seems like things went really well at Saddleback with Andy. I was just talking to Andy and things are going well. And he goes, it's been going very well. And I'm really glad I got finishing the task. He had something really big to sink his teeth into because Saddleback was huge.
Right.
And if you're just sitting there, very soon, Chris, you start to pine for the good old days.
Yeah.
Right. I remember when I used to teach more. I remember when I used to lead staff meetings. And I think when you have a big calling, like a calling into rather than just away from.
Yep.
So the markers I'm seeing are very, very healthy, and I have high hopes for not only the actual situation, but the precedent that it could set, or the example it could set for other churches.
We were certainly thinking that when we did it, that we were not only doing this for us, that we were also knowing that others were watching. So that means a lot, and I want to learn from it so I can, because I really hope I get to step into some spaces with other churches that need a outside party to help them navigate through those waters. So it's something that I'm actually hoping to do. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, we need that.
Yeah.
Like we need healthy models, and we need leaders who don't take they take their work seriously, but not themselves seriously. Right. And I think you embody that very well in the time I've spent with you online and offline. Take the work seriously, not yourself too seriously, and our churches will be a little bit healthier.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. I want to change gears here to an area that I really think you're one of the experts, if not the expert in, and that is church trends. By the way, I haven't always agreed with all of your trends over the years, or I don't know if I didn't agree with it or if I just didn't want it to be true. But I've read your latest list of the trends that you see for churches in 2025 and beyond, and I found them fascinating. A couple of them I really didn't even fully understand. Maybe it's because we don't see those necessarily in our church. But it's the number one question I get from pastors, the ones that I coach and mentor, is what do you see coming? And so I'd love to dive into some of these, however much time we have. Of course, they can always go to your website for all your articles and podcasts and the immense amount of resources that you provide. But the first one on that list was that Gen Z is in revival and retreat at the same time. What does that mean?
Well, I was trying to solve a puzzle in 2023, 2024, and so far into 2025. I mean, and some of the first clues were Asbury. We saw the outpouring is what they now call it. That happened at Asbury. And then you look at the Unitas movement with Jenny Allen and J.P. Pokluda, and you see, like in your home state, thousands of students gathering, hundreds baptized, and this is being replicated. And you see it in British churches, in some little pockets here and there, where it really seems like we're on the cusp of some kind of renewal or revival or outpouring or awakening or whatever you want to see. And you've got some leaders going, Gen Z is in revival. And I'm like, yeah, and I want to be that cheerleader for the church. And yet I also noticed when you look at the overall data, because I think it's good to be not data driven, but data informed, there's 70 million Gen Z. And you look at the Barna data, and as they get older, they're still dropping out of church. And they're less spiritually open than they were when they were teenagers. And some of that's inevitable, right? You're kind of curious as a teenager, and then maybe your worldview hardens a little bit, or life hits you in your 20s. You're a little less open. But there's 70 million Gen Zs. So on the one hand, you're seeing thousands, tens of thousands, maybe a couple 100,000 Gen Zs really lit up for Jesus. And on the other hand, you got 70 million. And now I would say I wrote that at the cusp of, the new year, January of 2025. Barna just last week released data that shows that for the first time, church attendance is going back up.
Wow.
It's been on a steady down and to the left thing. Now it's up and to the right a little bit, just 4 percentage points, I think. And it's being led by millennials and Gen Z. Millennials and Gen Z, yep, are returning to church or going to church more frequently and in greater number than Gen X and boomers.
Wow.
So that is super cool. So the revival is there. And again, it's small. I don't want to totally say, oh, I wish, it's not like 70 million Gen Z have dedicated their lives to Christ, but we are seeing an uptick. So I think as leaders, we have to live in this tension where there is revival. Celebrate it. Thank God for it. We prayed for this moment, fasted for this moment, lived for this moment for a long time, and it's starting to happen in pockets, but don't declare victory too soon.
Is there anything we can learn or do? Like, what should we, I'm such a pragmatic type of leader, and the information doesn't wow me unless I know what's my next step? What can we learn from that one trend, that first trend, or what can we do?
So one thing, top of the list, bring back confession. The prayer of confession has pretty much left the church. I grew up.
Now, why did you go there? Why did you go there? What's the connection between Gen Z and confession?
So when you're talking to Jenny Allen or J.P. Pokluda, and I've had on mic and off mic conversations with them about this, what's happening is Jenny will preach a sermon and just say, confess your sins. So, the other thing, Jonathan Haidt, all the research around Gen Z, they're the most anxious generation.
Right.
And they see the world on fire, like all of us see the world on fire. They internalize it. They have habits, just like everybody else has habits, and they're not all good habits, whether it's porn or addictions, etc. And what they're looking for, from what I understand from the field notes that I'm getting from the people doing these events, is when you give them an opportunity to confess their sins, they do it.
Wow.
And they do it in public, and they do it to each other. So imagine this. The next time you preach, you say, don't turn to your neighbor and greet them. Turn to your neighbor and confess their sins. That's weird, right? Okay.
Yeah. Somebody else try that first before we do it.
Yeah, exactly, right? Wow. That's from James 5.
Yeah.
But we don't do that in the church.
Yeah.
But Gen Z, when they've been doing that, that is transformative.
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful.
And it leads to baptism. So what I would say, I wouldn't just get up on Sunday and go like, all right, everybody turn to your neighbor, confess your sins. But what I would do is cultivate a time in your prayers where you're actually, we used to do this thing, when I was trained in my Presbyterian seminary, any Presbyterian would know this, prayer of approach and confession. And, it was sort of liturgical or whatever. And then when I switched to non-denominational, we kind of ditched it. I would bring it back.
Wow.
And I wouldn't make it super liturgical or high church, but I would say, God, we're here with unclean hands.
Yeah.
And we're harboring addictions and vengeance and anger. And we confess. Like, when was the last time you
so
heard
cool.
that?
I like that,
church?
actually. Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you're doing a series on confession, give people the opportunity just to have a response time.
Yeah.
and maybe come forward with a prayer team. Gen Z seems really, really drawn to that. The other thing I would say, Chris, for super practical, what you shared about the inferiority complex you had, talk about that.
Yeah.
About being bullied in middle school, talk about that. Because people identify with they admire your strengths, but they
Right.
identify with your weaknesses. So the more we can talk from a place of not just struggles that were 50 years ago, I once looked at porn when I was 12. It was like, hey, here's what happened last month. You look at JP Pokluda's ministry.
Yeah.
He'll talk to you about the current struggles in his life.
Yeah. That's so good. Very, very good. Okay. Trend number 2 is very interesting to me. Evangelism is on life support.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe not at Church of the Highlands.
Okay. Talk to us about that and why.
But again, I'm dealing with national data, right?
Yeah,
And
okay.
Alabama is different than California, is different than Vermont, et cetera, or different countries. There was this stat that just stopped me in my tracks, and it's a Barna stat, and it was asking pastors, how effective would you rate? So this is self-assessment, Chris. How would you rate the effectiveness at evangelism at Church of the Highlands? 1% of pastors nationally said that their church was very effective at it. And when I read that, I'm like, did I read that right?
Just 1%.
So, it was really, really tough. In 2015, it was 13%.
Oh, wow.
So that's a very meaningful statistical drop in a decade. And I applaud the honesty. Thank you for not pretending it's great when it's not great. But when 1% of churches say that they're effective at evangelism, so I started digging deeper. There's other data that shows of all the church growth, somewhere between 80 and 97% of it is transfer growth.
Oh, wow.
It's people from smaller churches moving to bigger churches. People who moved from, New York
City
to
to
Alabama
city.
are now attending Church of the Highlands, which is great. Some of that is inevitable. It's fine. But only 3 to 5% of churches in America are what they call high conversion growth churches, where a similar or greater number of their growth comes from people who didn't attend church. So when you look at that and think about how the dialogue has shifted since COVID, we definitely have a discipleship problem in the church, but everybody for the last 5 years has been discipleship. It's the only, any conference, all the books on discipleship. But ask 20 pastors what they mean by discipleship, you will get 20 different definitions.
Yeah.
And so all I'm doing in lifting that up as a trend is going over here, look what's happening. Nothing on evangelism. And you've got outlier churches that are doing a great job, but generally over the scope of the whole church, when 1% of churches are effective at it and 3 to 5% of churches are growing from conversion growth, not transfer growth, I think evangelism's on life support.
Yeah, one of the things that we focus on in the area of discipleship, and I say this for the benefit of every pastor who follows us or believes that we have some models that are maybe something worth following, is that Jesus said, "If you follow me, I will make you fishers of men." I mean, his definition, one of his definitions of discipleship was, "I'm going to teach you how to share your faith with others." And I would love for every pastor listening, every church listening, every believer listening, to kind of pick up that again, to learn how to share your faith with someone outside of the church world and off of platforms. And it's something that I think it's been one of the reasons why I would say we were in that 1% where it's not in decline. It's actually very, very strong. Is that we not only rely on what's happening on our stages, which we're very focused on people that are far from God, that are in the room and sharing the gospel in a clear way while we're feeding sheep, right? But that we're also teaching disciples how to be fishers of people, learning how to share your faith with others. And do you have any like, we need to get back to this, or something we need to put back into the church life so that evangelism can be on the uptick again?
I think you've hit on the top recommendation. It can't just be a great band or a great preaching that attracts people. We've seen sort of the eclipse of the attractional church. I think you're exactly right. You've got to train people. It's your responsibility. So Church of the Highlands, you have tens of thousands of people who are now going into their communities.
Right.
But I want to walk you into the trenches. So when you look at people who self-identify as having the spiritual gift of evangelism, the latest data I saw was about 1% of Christians say, I have the spiritual gift of evangelism.
1%.
1%. Now, that's probably underreported because if you ask most Christians, what are your spiritual gifts? They're like, I don't know. I have no idea. So let's say it's 10% though. And those are the people who can walk into a room, light it up, and be totally not weird by saying, hey, Chris, Tammy, you should come to my church this weekend, man. Where are you guys with God? And it's not an awkward question.
Right.
That's the gift of evangelism, but it probably isn't 90% of your church. But that doesn't let us off the hook. The other problem that you have with evangelism in most churches is like, I think you and Tammy, Tony and I, my wife, we haven't moved in a long time. Our kids are grown. Our relational circle's pretty stable. So you don't have 20 new people a month coming into your life that you can invite to church. People you play golf with,
That's
or
a
the
good
people
point.
you play golf
Yeah.
with for years. You've invited your cousin 42 times. He said no 42 times. So your network is kind of limited, and never stop praying. You never know. People change their mind, and maybe you join a new golf course and you meet some new people and all that. But the longer someone's at your church, the harder it gets to invite somebody. However, the best inviters to your church are going to be new people. And if somebody goes, like this Sunday will be somebody's first Sunday at Church of the Highlands and at Connexus Church, our church, if they get in there and they love it, they're going to do what you do when you find a new restaurant,
Oh, wow.
when you have a grandchild. They're going to tell everybody. They're going to be like, this is an awesome church. It's amazing. Now, the thing about a new person who's truly unchurched is all of their connections are new to your church. You end up with a network effect. And then if they invite another person that's new to your church, they're now connected to a lot of other people who are new to your church. And if you start to diagram this out, I mean, I can see you doing the math in your head. That's where the real exponential returns are. I'll give you a very concrete example. Within the last 12 months at our church, there was a guy who was working out, took Alpha at our church, gave his life to Christ, invited everybody from the gym. Well, everybody at the gym knew other people in their lives, and that like resulted in 50 new people attending our church. And so that's the network effect. So what you want to do as a pastor is you want to do exactly what you said, but then you want to find the new people. And if they are truly unchurched people, like we're in a pretty post-Christian culture, north of Toronto, Canada, they don't even know they have permission to invite people to our church. I've had people stop me and go like, hey, I really like our church. Is it okay if I invite somebody? It's like, okay, yeah, we expect it, but they don't know because they haven't done church before.
Yeah.
So focus on new people who will invite new people who will invite new people. You
That's
get the
very
network
good.
effect.
That's very good. We're hoping that this podcast is going to drop before Easter of 2025. And I still think that's one of the best opportunities. Some of the old data used to say that it's one of your best chances of the 52 Sundays to get a yes.
It is.
To church. Is it still true?
I think it is Easter, but especially Christmas. The reason I'm big on Christmas is Easter, you get the Easter bunny in the grocery store and that kind of stuff and at the mall. But at Christmas, everything syncs up. Mariah Carey starts singing. Music switches to literally, you will hear 18th century hymns done by top singers. You know, you've got all kinds of Christian songs on the radio. Everybody's putting out decorations. And I know it's season's greetings in some areas, but it's where the culture syncs up with the Christian calendar, and it doesn't do it as much as Easter.
Yeah.
So if you're in a Bible Belt, yeah, Easter is really going to deliver. In California, I remember years ago in Toronto, I heard someone say, hey, first long weekend of the season coming up. I'm like, long weekend? What do they mean? They were talking about Easter.
Oh.
It's like, ooh, that is not cool.
Yeah.
You know, that is not cool. That is, Easter is not a long weekend. Okay. But that's how this secular guy was thinking about it.
Well.
So yeah, Easter, Christmas, Another hack, I discovered this by accident because it frustrated me. We'd be halfway through a series in the fall and all of a sudden attendance would spike 20%. I'm like, what? It's always the first Sunday in November. Time change Sunday.
Oh, wow.
So time change Sunday, the first Sunday in November, people are up earlier, the kids are up earlier, and just naturally, without any prompting, they show up at church. So now what we've done for years is we kick off a series on that time change Sunday in the fall when you get the extra hour back.
That's
because
fascinating.
attendance
I've
is
never
already
thought
higher,
to do that.
and then it creates momentum heading into Christmas.
I've never thought to do that. Wow. That is
Well,
really good.
it just frustrated me because we'd be halfway through a series. I was like, why did week 3 spike? It wasn't even that good. And then I'm like, I looked at the historic data. It's like, oh, time change. That's it. And it works every year.
One of the things I love is that, and I get criticized, I think you probably might too, is that how much we rely or look at the numbers, but I always say numbers are indicators of health. We're not worshiping numbers. We're not touting numbers. We certainly don't need to put our ego around numbers, but I love the fact that, we're guiding our churches and we're leading our churches through informed data that really helps us. And I appreciate that about you. We only have a minute or so left, but would you tell people what's available if they want more of what they've heard? We only got to 2 of the 5 trends that you wrote about in your latest article, but tell us where we get all things Carey Nieuwhof.
Yeah, you can go to careynieuwhof.com, which is impossible to spell, but you'll see the 2025 church trends. I have a YouTube channel as well. Or where we do a lot of this stuff and do deep dives is in the Art of Leadership Academy. So if you go to the artofleadershipacademy.com, you'll find a lot of stuff there. It's our membership program, and we have a couple thousand church leaders that hang out there and have great discussions like this. So we'd welcome people there.
Well, Carey, it's always a joy to spend time with you. It seems like I always become a better leader and appreciate not only you and what you do, but it makes me fall in love with the church more because I love that about you. You do care about the decline, and thank God. Hopefully, this 4% incline is something positive, and it can continue. But I love and appreciate you, my friend.
Love and appreciate you, Chris, and I'm really excited about your new chapter. And I love that the wider church gets a little more Chris Hodges. I think we're all going to benefit from that. And I want to thank you for your commitment to growing leaders. Really appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you. It's good to have you on the show.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And also a big thank you to all of our partners that help make the Grow Leader podcast happen. For over 80 years, Wesleyan Investment Foundation has helped churches with their borrowing and investing needs. And whether you're dreaming of new opportunities or seeking wise resource management, we think WIF can help you. You can learn more about them at wifonline.com/growleader. For over 30 years, One Hope has partnered with churches and ministries to impact the lives of children and youth with the message of the gospel of Christ. Through collaboration with local communities worldwide, One Hope has reached over 2 billion young people in 112 countries. Discover how you could partner with them at onehope.net/growleader. If you're looking for ways to know your people better and also grow your church at the same time, you need to know about Studio C. Studio C combines strategy, technology, and communications to maximize church member engagement. You can bridge the engagement gap and transform your church's impact with Studio C, and you can learn more about them at thestudioc.org/growleader.